In a quiet, modern-day town tucked between rolling hills and long stretches of highway in America, there lived a boy named Ethan Carter. It was the kind of town where everyone greeted each other, where mornings smelled like fresh coffee and evenings were filled with the laughter of children playing outside. But Ethan was never one of those children. At 16, he had built a reputation that followed him everywhere. He was the laziest boy in town. Ethan avoided anything that required effort. His room was always messy, his schoolwork incomplete, and his responsibilities ignored. While others his age worked part-time jobs or studied for their future, Ethan spent his days lying on his bed, scrolling endlessly on his phone, or watching videos late into the night. His parents constantly worried about him, but their words never seemed to reach him. "Ethan, you can't keep living like this," his mother would say, her voice full of concern. "I'll figure it out," he would reply casually, without even looking up. But the truth was, he had no intention of figuring anything out. His best friend Noah often tried to motivate him. "Don't you want something more? A goal? A plan?" he asked one afternoon. Ethan simply shrugged. "Too much work." That was always his answer. Then, one day, life forced him to confront the reality he had been avoiding. Ethan's father, who worked at a local hardware store, was seriously injured when a heavy shelf collapsed on him. He survived, but the injury left him unable to work for months. Overnight, the steady income that supported the family disappeared. The house, once warm and peaceful, filled with worry and silence. Bills began to pile up, and Ethan could see the stress growing in his mother's eyes. One evening, she sat him down at the kitchen table. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Ethan, we need help. I can't do this alone." For the first time in his life, Ethan felt something shift inside him. It wasn't motivation, not yet, but it was a heavy sense of responsibility he couldn't ignore. At first, he resisted the idea of change. "I don't know how to do anything," he muttered, but there was no one else to step in. The next morning, after a long internal struggle, Ethan forced himself out of bed earlier than he ever had before. Every part of him wanted to go back to sleep, but he didn't. Instead, he went to his father's workplace and asked for a temporary job. The store owner looked at him with doubt. Everyone knew Ethan's reputation. "This isn't easy work," the man said. "You'll have to earn it." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll try." His first day was one of the hardest days of his life. He swept floors, carried heavy boxes, and organized shelves. His arms ached, his back hurt, and sweat soaked through his clothes. By midday, he wanted to quit more than anything. "This is too much," he whispered to himself. But then he thought of his father struggling to move and his mother trying to hold everything together. For the first time, quitting didn't feel like an option. "Just one more hour," he told himself. That 1 hour turned into another, and then another. Days turned into weeks, and slowly something began to change. Ethan started waking up earlier without being forced. He began to understand the work, learning how to fix things, organize efficiently, and even help customers. The same boy who once avoided effort now found a strange sense of pride in completing tasks. One afternoon, an elderly man came into the store, confused about how to repair a broken cabinet. Ethan stepped forward and carefully explained what needed to be done. As he spoke, something unexpected happened. He realized he actually knew what he was doing. For the first time, he felt capable. That feeling stayed with him. But the journey wasn't easy. One evening, after an exhausting day at work, Ethan received his report card. He had failed 2 subjects. The sight of it hit him hard. The old Ethan would have ignored it, shrugged it off, and gone back to his phone. But this time, he couldn't. "I'm trying so hard, and it's still not enough," he said quietly, his voice filled with frustration. That night, instead of giving up, Ethan did something he had never done willingly before. He sat at his desk, opened his books, and began to study. "I'm not going back," he whispered to himself. From that moment on, Ethan pushed himself harder than ever before. He worked during the day and studied at night. It was exhausting, and there were moments when he wanted to fall back into his old habits, but each time he reminded himself of how far he had come and how much more he still had to lose if he gave up. Slowly, his grades began to improve. His teachers noticed the change. His parents noticed it too, but they said little, letting his actions speak for themselves. The house began to feel lighter again, filled with hope instead of worry. Months later, Ethan stood outside his home, watching the same streets he had once ignored. Everything looked the same, but he was not. His father was recovering, his mother was smiling again, And for the first time in his life, Ethan felt proud of himself. Noah walked up to him one evening and looked at him with a grin. "What happened to you?" Ethan smiled back, a quiet confidence in his eyes. "I got tired of being tired." He had learned something that no one could teach him, only life could. Laziness had once controlled him. It had stolen his time, his opportunities, and his confidence. It had made him believe that effort wasn't worth it. But when life forced him to face reality, he discovered something powerful. Change begins with a single decision. Ethan was never special. He wasn't the smartest or the strongest. He was just someone who finally chose to try. And that choice changed everything. The lazy boy was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, someone determined, someone transformed. Because in the end, laziness may feel comfortable for a moment, but it quietly destroys dreams, potential, and self-worth. Only through effort, persistence, and the courage to change can a person truly become who they are meant to be.